There it is. All right, welcome everybody to our 2020 annual meeting of the Pocock Rowing Center. Glad we can gather, virtually here on Zoom for this. We have a great meeting planned, and it's good to see members in attendance. And I hope that we will get a lot of member engagement here, and hopefully spur some member engagement through the meeting. It's really essential to our community. We want members to be engaged, whether they just came to the Pocock Rowing Center, new members, and we want members who have been here for 20 years to be super engaged as well, and to have a lot of pride and ownership over the boathouse. We also want the feedback that you have and we want to get it as the MC, as the management committee, so that we can basically take that into account. So my name's Ted Leslie. I was the chair this year. I'm just going to play the host role and try to keep us on track during this hour. And let's just remember that, our boathouse is here for all our members to thrive, and also to meet the mission of the GPRF. So, speaking of which, I wanted to mention we have a new executive director of the GPRF this year. You may have seen her at the auction, but we're still getting to know her. So I just wanted to ask Jen, if you're on, would you be willing to answer a few questions during the meeting?
Yes, of course. Hello.
Oh, great. Hi, Jen. Listen, I know you were in Chicago, and you started an organization called Row there before you came here. And I understand it was a warm and welcoming community, and we want to make sure we're welcoming to you here this year also at PRC. So we'd like to get to know you a little bit. Could you tell us first, if you sweep, choose port or starboard, and if you scull, choose bow or stroke?
I always prefer to row starboard. I rowed at Michigan State, and in all the attempts that I had to row port, it never really worked all that well for me. And I prefer to stroke. We have like a running joke in the office over the last few weeks about, I'll sit any seat as long as it's stroke. So just as a good laugh to kind of kick that off. Okay. I'm also terrible at bowing. I have been known to run into things, so it's my preference not to bow.
All right, good to know. What's something you enjoy doing besides rowing?
I enjoy cycling. There's a lot more elevation out here in the Pacific Northwest than there was in Chicago, so still adjusting to that, but it's lovely.
All right, and then when you left Row, you wrote it was a dream that grew into something far more beautiful than you could have ever imagined. Is it possible that PRC could grow into something more beautiful than you ever could have imagined?
Well, that question is kind of hard, because I didn't imagine when I took over Row that what would have happened. But to kind of share a little bit more about, I guess, what I meant when I said that, and when I consider being here at the GPRF, I think that rowers tend to learn how to row, and they love it so much that they have a spirit of generosity sort of within them, and they want other people to row, and they want everybody to row, and they want people to be a part of the rowing community. So I think when I consider what I might imagine for the GPRF and what I would hope to bring to any rowing organization is to inspire that generosity and to help communities understand how they can greater contribute to the whole and contribute to our sport generally. I think that is something that rowers tend to want to do, is to give back. And so in my career, I've really found a lot of joy in helping individuals and helping organizations become, truly philanthropic and charitable organizations, with rowing as the tool in the center of that. And so whatever that looks like in the time that I'm here, I hope I'm able to help contribute to that.
All right, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
Just wanted to mention, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We're going to be monitoring those and we can pick them up at the end of the hour. All right, with that, I'm going to pass over to Patrick now.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks very much, Ted. Yeah, just want to just give a brief overview of the organization. I think as we look at our org chart, I think sometimes that's real helpful to see the size and the scope of our organization, and to know that the PRC is one component of a bigger organization that has both local, regional, and national interests. As for those of you that may have joined us last year, you'll recognize obviously that you recognize that our org chart is a bit smaller than it was at this point last year. COVID was COVID had a few tough breaks for our organization, and like many nonprofits, we've adapted and retooled and come at it with a renewed sense of energy under Jen's leadership. Also, I think we're all very, very proud to say that we've been able to bring on Arshay Cooper with the Most Beautiful Thing Fund, which is a national fund, and we're very proud to have him on our team. That's just something that is very important to all of us. Addressing the lack of diversity and lack of just a cultural deficiency in our sport, and it's a sign of our efforts to move that forward. So. Another new person who may not have seen yet is Mel Shuttleworth, who is handling our development and communications. So it's a good sense of the scaled down scope of our organization. Click through the slide there, Meg, maybe. We also see a bit of a smaller support staff at the Pocock Rowing Center this year. Again, unfortunately, due to COVID and scaling down our revenue and our revenue expectations, we've also eliminated a number of support service positions at the PRC. So we kind of see mainly our staff made up of hourly coaches, our full-time program coordinators, Helen and Corey, lead their teams. And then obviously we function, we would not function without the help of Rachel Arend, who works in our member services office and handles our middle school program. And then, of course, our boatman, Chuck, who keeps us all on the water and allows us to do what we like to do out there. So next there. Yeah, I think these next few slides, just kind of chat about some of the overview, some of the details and items that are of note for the membership. Again, sort of a review and overview of what we've just kind of our year in review aspect here. Obviously, you can see we've brought in a number of boats to allow us to pivot and serve a high number of athletes this year. We've truly increased the size of our fleet, and thanks to clever scheduling, we use this equipment a lot. I think something that's pretty important to note is through our use of iCrew. So far this year, we've rowed since May about 26,000 hours in all of this equipment. So that's quite an accomplishment, I think. I think also worthy of note are the number of members that have been very generous in donating or loaning us equipment to get more kids in particular, but more athletes on the water this summer, this fall, and moving forward. So you kind of see that we've also loaned out as much equipment as we can. Again, the members that can't join us, whether they're potentially not rowing in team boats or but still remaining members in the club, giving them the opportunity to use club equipment, and also particularly our youth athletes that are training and making an effort at setting their ergometer scores as fast as possible in order to, as a component of their collegiate recruiting, making sure they have the resources they need to continue training at a high level. So, okay, thanks, Meg. Next item of business, an item of concern for the membership has typically been discussed at this meeting is our parking situation. As you know, last year we moved into the, actually over a year ago, we moved into the 52 space lot. I certainly understand the frustration at seeing the Graham lot unoccupied. We have spoken with WashDOT. At this point, WashDOT has offered to lease us some of those spaces. However, at a cost that a cost of, I think it's like $80 a month, and we have not registered a need to use those spaces until this point. So obviously we know that we've got that option for us if we need to take it. I think one thing that's important to remember is that 52 space lot is also intended to revert back to WashDOT at some point this year. We expect it will be delayed. At this point, we're expecting maybe the third or fourth quarter to move our parking from the 52 space lot across the street from the French bakery to the east side of East Lake Avenue in that paved space known as the Triangle. So that we will continue to reduce down. We'll go down to 39 parking spaces at that point in time. At this point, again, I think my overview and comments on that is that we very much appreciate people's efforts at carpooling, riding their bikes, and finding alternate means of transportation, getting to the boathouse. Our neighborhood, as we know, is growing. There are a number of other construction projects in the neighborhood. So we do expect parking to be a continued crunch on our operation. And we certainly appreciate when we send parking surveys. That really helps us make decisions. So we do appreciate it when you fill those surveys out and give us information that's helpful in making those decisions. Thing that's important to note is that we share these parking spaces and the expense with 3 partners in the building that's on the other side of Furman Avenue, a couple of physical therapists and a dentist. So again, a tribute to the membership at adapting and dealing with difficult circumstances there. So okay, Meg. Obviously, have a general overview of our budget. This year we were able to navigate the COVID reductions in revenue. Again, not ideally, but to a point where we have financial stability. And I think that's important to make note that our membership and our youth athlete participation has allowed us to remain afloat and not run a deficit budget this year. So again, that's a tribute to our members and families for sticking with us through what in all reality is potentially the toughest year in the history of many rowing clubs. As we look and see what the landscape of other rowing organizations look like, there are a number of rowing clubs that have in fact closed their doors or had to just simply cease operations. So again, we're real pleased that we're able to continue doing what we're doing here. So, okay, Meg. As we look at our budget for next year, I think it is very important to note that our last dues increase was in 2018. So, this year we expect to, we expect the cost of membership to increase this year, largely cost of inflation and the cost of increased costs of running the building here. So that's on our topic of conversation this week at the management committee meeting, and that'll go out to the membership and to the youth families at the end of the week. I think to note that with the youth program, we have slightly been increasing essentially our cost per hour by about $1 per hour per season. So right now on our youth program, it costs somewhere around $11 to $12 per hour of participation, which again, we believe we're providing a very high value to those athletes. Like that. Okay, Meg. Yeah, same thing that's under review is our program fees. Obviously, as we know, our typical coach-athlete ratio is typically pretty high with rowing in singles from our safety perspective and from just a density of population perspective. That ratio has been split. So yeah, we're going to review our program fees for our adults, like our adult team fee is what this slide refers to. So next, Meg. We expect to open registration on January 1st, and that is in order to keep our revenue from 2021 processed in 2021. So I have these items that are typically open in December. They're going to open in January for both youth and adult registration and renewals. If you're on a monthly membership, that will just automatically, that'll automatically transfer over to 2021. Okay. I just want to make mention here. I think it's just very important to note that, yeah, we have had a very high number of challenges, but been very, very proud of the way we've adapted to all this. I think from an individual athlete perspective, I think we have just done a fantastic job of rethinking our participation in the sport. And I think that's opened up some new horizons. I think for some of us, it might not have been ideal, but I think at this point we are really understanding just a very different, a very different aspect of the sport that we may not have had contact with. So it is, I think it's very good to see. I think ultimately it makes our group stronger. I think we're able to make new relationships, meet new people, talk to different people. And again, I think that's been good for our community. We've noticed that volunteerism has been quite high during these times, which again, I think indicates people's commitment to the organization and their desire right now for community. And again, it's been quite a ride, but seeing our organization rise to the challenge, I think has been really awesome. So I think turn it over to.
Hold on one second, Patrick. There was just a question from Joe in the chat. I'll just read it out. Is that reduction in revenue that you talked about mainly due to a large program such as youth rowing, or was it a result of reduction in membership on a more general level?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's the reduction in revenue came largely from the biggest reduction came from travel, in particular our youth travel. Traveling with a team of 120 to 140 athletes typically generates about $200,000 to $240,000 worth of revenue. So while we've seen our membership remain quite stable, our biggest reduction has been in travel revenue and travel expenses. That's why we've been able to keep them somewhat commensurate. So we've also seen a reduction in, a small reduction in our participation in our adult teams. And but membership has remained pretty stable here, which is good. So.
All right, can we just to keep us on track here, can we pass it over to let's see, Ann Margaret, and stop sharing the screen.
Thanks, Patrick, for all that information. I'm Ann Margaret. I'm a youth team parent. I've got a current boy rower and a graduated girl youth team rower. I worked on the auction with the auction committee this fall, and it turned out to be a really great event. We had to pivot pretty quickly and go to a virtual event versus our typical community builder group meeting, but we switched. A lot of people worked really hard in uncharted territory to get it to come together. And we were able to raise around $96,000, which was fantastic. And we still have some matching gifts that we're looking at coming in and hoping to see soon. That money was raised really to help support our operations and to keep everything running smoothly at Pocock. And I just really want to spend the majority of my time thanking everybody who not only donated gifts, donated dessert items, which were great, and also just donated money as well as purchased the items and that kind of stuff. Your support of our boathouse is fantastic and what keeps us going forward. I'd also really like to thank Ted for managing the dessert dash, Meg, who was all things procurement, Kirsten Wiley, who managed all the details in the background, which was fantastic, and Patrick, who kind of managed everything. And then everyone else who worked really hard, Corey, Zoe, Chase and Jen, were really great the night of and helped support throughout this whole, change in plans. And it was super, super great. We're hoping next fall we can all meet together again in person. That is our goal. We had a deposit down on a location and we were able to keep that deposit down. And so we'll be able to have that same location in the future, hopefully this fall, fingers crossed. Our hope for this spring would be able to open up the potential of having parties for late spring or early summer. Typically in the past, we sell tickets to parties, and those are huge community builders and a lot of fun. And so our hope is that we can open up some of those parties and host some of those parties throughout the late spring or early summer. But again, that is all dependent on state restrictions and that kind of stuff. But again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated in the auction on every aspect, from donating to volunteering. It was a lot of fun and a good event. Thanks.
All right, so it's now I think we're going to turn to equipment. I think we're looking at Steph.
Yeah, thanks for the auction update, Anne Margaret. I'm Steph. I'm going to tell you about the equipment committee that we formed this year. It consists of myself, Ted, and T. We really wanted to form this committee so that we could get better insight and knowledge into the use of our boats and equipment, and then make informed decisions about fleet planning and how to trade boats in and out. And so we felt like to do that, one of the first things we needed to do was to digitize the fleet as well as its use through reservations. And so that was the initial impetus for getting into iCrew. And then of course the pandemic happened and it really forced us to get that up and running ASAP. And I think kudos to everybody who sort of rolled with everything to start using this system and get it on board super quickly. As Patrick said, it was like 26,000 hours of rowing, all of which has flowed through the iCrew system. And so that's amazing. And now we have all that data and we can use it to inform a new fleet plan. So that's some ongoing work that's happening. We're mostly still in the planning and research stages of that, looking at the inventory of our boats, looking at how it's used, looking at fleet plans from other boat houses, contacting manufacturers to see what kind of packages they can put together for us, are also things that we're working out right now. I think our general strategy is going to be to trade out racing shells on a more frequent basis than training shells. And we're going to keep working with coaches to establish those boat priorities in terms of what is going to be coming in and out of the boathouse so that we can have a more regular turnover of shells. So continuing to look into next year, we're going to keep using iCrew to get people out onto the water and to track our boat usage, and keep looking at other ways that we can better utilize the boats that we have, looking at how rack space can be reorganized as we start to keep using singles, but maybe start getting into other boats, and same with looking into boat sharing options with members who have their private boat and may want to share it with a member so that we can get even more people out on the water. So that's all that's going on the equipment front. And I think Amber is going to tell us about the diversity committee next.
Yes, thanks. I'm Amber Wong. We've renamed ourselves the Inclusion Project, just to sound a little bit more jazzy. So I'm going to tell you what we're doing in the boathouse to make it more inclusive, and more importantly, how you guys can be part of that. So the Inclusion Project is made up of, let's see, Ted Leslie, George Naden, Ann Geyer, Margaret Christopher, and me. But first I wanted to start off with something that for me is sort of personal, and in a way echoes why I joined the Inclusion Project. I don't follow baseball, but I know this. Kim Eng became the first woman, the first Asian American to be hired as a GM for a Major League Baseball team. And this is a big deal. I mean, over the last 13 years, she's been interviewed constantly. And my son told me she finally told teams to quit interviewing her if they're just going to use her to say they were just interviewing for diversity. She's just said, call me when you're serious. And I'm glad they finally got serious about it. Because what I want to tell you is representation is important. It's important to me. The only icon of my era, the only positive representation we've had for almost a generation was Bruce Lee. You know, he finally made us visible to America, at least as something other than a caricature or a buffoon. So here's the point. Representation means a lot. And I've noticed this around the boathouse as well. When you don't see anyone who looks like you in the media or your workplace or in your boathouse, you may feel you don't belong. So what are we doing? We're trying to make the boathouse a more welcoming place for all. So we have to start with our community. We're setting the groundwork for post-pandemic recruitment so we can encourage diversity inclusion. So what have we done so far? We've lobbied to add diversity and inclusion language into our boathouse mission so that we're all bought into this. This is an important integral part. We've started an awareness campaign. You may have seen the diversity and inclusion links in Patrick's newsletter. Those are good. I mean, you should check those out. We're trying to encourage people to think about these things. We created opportunity for dialogue. We had initial meetings with many of the teams. And I wanted to thank those of you who participated because we got a lot of good ideas from you. Again, we wanted to have the discussion to learn together and also to be able to develop a diversity plan based on that information. We also created a resource page. It's now live on our website. And basically, we've curated articles and videos and podcasts. Many of them are around sports for Boathouse members to think about. So it's kind of a resource for us. And also if you're involved in diversity activities elsewhere, you can use that, you can dip into that. We've also drafted a diversity plan because you have to have a plan to make sure you're taking this seriously. So we want to make it real and we want it to go on into the future. So far, what we've done is we've commissioned a banner. So we've commissioned a Black graphic artist to develop a banner for our boathouse. It's going to hang on the water side. It's going to say, "Rowers Against Racism. It takes all of us." And I think that was something that we decided was more inclusive of what our boathouse could be part of, and also points to the idea it is for adults, for youth, for everybody. We're all in this together. So what you can do. What we'd like to invite you to do is to participate in diversity discussions with us, to talk to other members. Maybe as we get these things going, you can volunteer to lead a discussion over a topic or book or podcast or quote that inspires you. Because basically we don't want to be an impediment. I think that becoming a more inclusive boathouse doesn't need to change your love of the sport. I mean, it just adds a level of awareness and how we can build our community together. So that's all I have to say. I am going to hand it off to Brooks, who's going to talk about safety.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brooks Chase. I'm a member of the Evening Masters program, and I've been a member of POCOC for 6 years. I'd like to open by acknowledging and thanking my fellow safety committee members, Marcy Hupp, Bill Woodman, Patrick, Margaret Christopher, and we had special guest appearances who added real contributions, and they included Ted, George Naden, and Bill Picard. This year, above all others, the challenges COVID imposed on us has put real safety demands on the club. The staff had to develop protocols for reopening and running the operation in a manner that kept our members safe. That included developing cleaning protocols and modifying and managing activity around the boathouse and the dock. In addition, we went to just small boats, so everyone, including many inexperienced or sweep rowers who were suddenly rowing in singles. So we had lots of moving parts. but it resulted in an impressive safety record. Since May 5th, we've rowed 26,000 hours, as Patrick mentioned. That included 12,000 sessions. And in that time, we've only had 5 collisions, which is a pretty good record. So kudos to the coaches and members for adapting so conscientiously to these challenges. Some specific initiatives we've accomplished include firming up the requirements that members provide evidence of passing a swim test. We recognize that this could be a burden for some, so we organized a series of lifeguard monitoring swim tests off the dock this past summer. We also organized several flip training sessions, which, given the multitude of members now in singles, we felt would be a valuable service to the members. We recognize the need to reduce the potential for crowding and minor chaos during peak rowing times, so we organized dock monitors to be available to assist rowers and provide some management of the waterfront. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the contribution that Stephanie Seaman made to the safe and organized operation of the boathouse through her role in rolling out and management of the iCrew app. Without the reliability of this app, we would have lacked the foundation on which to manage the boathouse safely. And then, of course, we need to recognize the work that Patrick and the entire staff did under these pressure-packed circumstances and all the uncertainty that COVID created. So thanks particularly to the staff. And now I will pass it over to Tariq Omar, our incoming chair.
Thanks, Brooks. Hey, everyone, I'm T. Quick background, I've been at PRC since 2016, and back when team boats were allowed, which seems like ages ago, I used to row with the competitive Masters men. I will be taking over the role as chair of the management committee next year from Ted, and wanted to briefly touch on the direction and kind of what I see the MC's role as we go into 2021. As Ted noted in his opening remarks, having an engaged membership is really a key part of what PRC is all about. And as we head into 2021 with a lot of continued uncertainty about a lot of things, like when we'll be allowed to row team boats again, what racing season will look like, if we'll have a racing season, and so on, I expect that the management committee is going to continue to work on understanding and serving the needs of our members. Specifically, I see some primary opportunities is really continuing and improving our member engagement, making sure we're keeping the spirit of one PRC alive in the boathouse, even though we can't all come together in a big group at the boathouse for parties in the auction like we have in the past, and hopefully we can in the future. But until such time, how do we keep that spirit alive amongst our membership? 2, ensuring that we're serving the youth, the needs of our youth athletes. Right now we have a lot of masters on this call, but the youth are the future of the sport. And so really partnering with our youth coaches, ensuring we're serving their needs, helping with their ongoing efforts to increase awareness of the opportunities this sport offers for people of all backgrounds. And 3, finally, I think what we've laid a foundation for this year and just continuing, which is maximizing the rowing and racing opportunities for our members in this rapidly changing environment, whether it's singles, rowing for other boathouses, or racing against other boathouses in the Seattle area, or maybe we'll be able to go to Charles next year, who knows. And then finally, before passing it on, I also want to take this opportunity to thank Ted and Ara, who are both coming up at the end of their term on the MC. They've served dutifully for the past 2 years on the MC, so if you see them, the next time you see them, thank them for their dedication to the PRC community. And with that, I will pass it on to Helen.
Thank you for that, T. I'll get the slides going again here. All right, Meg, if we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So looking sort of at the operational side of things, things that we had to change when COVID hit. And today actually marks the official 3.5 month date since I started. So some of this has definitely been cannibalized from what Alex had already written up. Biggest adaptations that we made was one, increasing the fleet of club singles. we now have enough shells to, with creative scheduling, get everybody on the water pretty often. But in order to make that happen, we have been running scheduling 7 days a week since June in small times with lots of staggered launch times. And it's been an impressive set of operations to keep people organized and showing up and leaving at the right time. It's been really inspiring to come into a coaching staff who are prepared and willing to make that schedule work. It certainly has taught us our limits in a couple regards, and that's been very important information for us to learn as we look towards next year. But it's been a very impressive effort by a staff of 11 to 12 youth coaches to make 7 days a week, almost nonstop, happen for over 6 months. And with all those efforts, we've been able to sustain a roster of over 120 youth athletes. 120 was sort of been the low point that we're at right now, given our winter operations. In the fall, we had 163 youth participants, which would be a large size team no matter what year we were operating in. A fun addition that, the challenges of COVID has actually created an opportunity for is we had already been working in collaboration with David DeWinter, who's the founder of Row Hero, which is a training app that the team has been using for the last year or so for their on-land training. When we transitioned to having to do everything independently or virtually, he reached out and said, I'd like to help you guys as much as possible. Are you willing to sort of be a guinea pig for me as we test out some new things? And he and I have been talking once or twice a week since August on developing new things so that as our athletes are having to train on their own more, we are able to provide resources that still keep them connected, that give them good training plan data that's easily available, that allows coaches to see what everyone's doing and provide informed decisions and recommendations with that information. And David's got some really interesting things that are going to be rolling out over the next year. And a lot of it is based on experiences that our PRC youth athletes have had using the app, and it will be implemented for all users of it. So any other team that signs on to things will get the benefit of the experience our kids have had in playing with some of that stuff, which I'm not sure how much our athletes are yet aware of that, because you never know how much they actually read what you send them. But I know that in the years to come, they're going to see that there are a lot of things in there that are pretty cool. Next slide, please, Meg. The highlights for this year are on the quantifiable side, different from what you would have seen in previous years. We don't have competitive results to share. We're not tracking training data in the same way. A lot of the things on here are things that in normal years we would say, yeah, well, that just means that we kept the doors open. But I think we all know that this was a year in which keeping the doors open and keeping people on the water is a massive highlight. Coming into a club of this size with people all in singles and seeing it go, what did Brooke say? We've had 5 collisions since May 5th, despite 26,000 hours of programming. That's an accomplishment. And it's an accomplishment that's going to pay dividends for a long time. The fact that all of our youth rowers are now experienced single scullers is nothing short of a bit of a miracle. I can't say if I think that we're going to see those skills in the single used all that much as soon as we're able to go back into team boats. I think everyone's going to say no thank you to the single for a while when we aren't forced in them. But as someone who's been in coaching long enough to see the long-term effects of that kind of experience, it makes me really hopeful for what these athletes will be able to do in the sport, regardless of how long they stay in it or where they decide to take it. And we've had a lot of new faces. We've become temporarily or otherwise a home for a lot of rowers whose clubs are not currently able to run. And what the future of that is, we don't know right now, but it's been a great indicator of success to me that those athletes wanted to come to PRC. They've stayed at PRC. They're contributing to the experience. They're supporting the mission that we hold dear here. It tells me that we're doing something right, because people are not calling their friends and saying, don't come here. They're very much doing the opposite, which gives us all the right challenges. And as of right now, we have over 10 seniors who are committed to collegiate rowing programs to begin next fall. And we've got a few more that are still in the recruitment process. There'll be a slide later that sort of shows a list of schools, but really great representation at a wide array of schools from athletes who are, I think, going to be big contributors on those teams. So looking towards next year, we learned a lot over the last 3 seasons of what runs well and what does not work quite so well in our current times. Looking at likely having a slightly smaller roster capacity for the spring, understanding that if we need to stay in singles, we need to be starting the year in a schedule that is sustainable for coaches and athletes for up to 6 months. We're running just fine right now, but we are definitely running on fumes as we get closer to the end of the year. 7 days a week is a tough schedule for a lot of people to hold. So right now, we've learned that planning in the shorter term is definitely the more sustainable way to do things right now. So we've got a January plan, and we're working on February, March, and then April, May plan. So that in the event that the world changes at the same pace it has been changing, we are actually able to adapt with that with less disruption to instead of doing 6 months of programming at a time. We do have, there is some light on the horizon in terms of having some sort of competitive season. There's been a bi-weekly Northwest coaches call that's been happening since March. And there's conversation about how to set up at least a regional scrimmage format that everyone can participate in. We are prepared as a region to be offering competitive opportunities for our athletes here in the Pacific Northwest, regardless of what's happening on the national scale, from US Rowing hosting competitions, et cetera. So it's been really cool to see the community on the coaching side come together and continue to provide resources and support for that. I'm not going to share any details because we don't have any right now about what racing looks like, but athletes can expect to get to do something at speed against another team at some point before May. Next slide, thanks. So here's just the list of schools as of now. I know this is always sort of a fun one to see where are PRC kids going to be heading off to in a couple months. We got a good list of things. I think we'll have a few others on the team also going to some of these universities, and looking forward to hopefully in March and April being able to share with all of you that we've got some more updates. And I believe I'm handing it off to Corey.
Can I just real quick, Helen, there was a question in the chat from Shelly about January registrations. I don't know if you want to answer that right now. It was for youth, but it could apply to everybody.
Yeah, just give me a moment to catch up on
How
that.
about I can read it just for everybody. Can you talk about how January registration will work? Is it truly first to register, or how is selection of practice times and who gets their first choice managed? Advice on how those that have been with POCOC remain with POCOC and the sport, if registration is a frenzy for current members to remain with the club, especially when it comes down to minutes.
So we're going to be having a youth parent directed communication about that next week to share those details, because I know there's a lot of people who aren't on this call who will need that. The initial set of information on that topic went out in today's parent newsletter, and full details, including registration numbers, will be going out in next week's newsletter. But that registration will open on January 4th and programming will start on January 11th. Right now, we are only opening registration at that time for January programming, and details on later spring programming will come in the next couple weeks.
Okay, great. Meg, can we go to the next slide? So Patrick asked me, what did we do before COVID? And I was like, I don't know, nothing. We went to the Bahamas is what we did in January. So we had a group of 8 members go join the Nassau Rowing Club. It was our first kind of international rowing curated event. My good friend is the head coach of that program. So you can see us looking tan and very close together. We will not be doing that in 4 weeks, unfortunately, next year, but maybe again in the future. Some highlights that we have that are a little different since we didn't have major regattas are the I Love Sushi series that Peter Hurdle continues to helm. So big thank you to Peter, who does it on a volunteer basis, and also the coaches and members who have helped assist with that. Everything from timing to dropping the buoys to helping with registration. There have been 13 events so far. A couple of them were canceled due to weather, but 270 plus participants. There's still 2 more events left, so I don't doubt we will break the 300 number, and that is reflective of both our members and members of fellow Seattle community boathouses. The largest event, which I think was a big highlight for me personally and a lot of our competitive members, was the Head of the Lake Light that we did. Half of those participants, nearly half, were from Pocock, so we had really good club representation, and we were also able to get 20 Pocock and Renton Rowing Center juniors on the water. That event, along with the Halloween Spooktacular Scrimmage, which was the same weekend, would not have been possible without the help of a lot of volunteers. People have stepped into the role, from helping on the dock to driving launches and being safety backup, helping with course setup and breakdown. So a big thank you again to our volunteers. A number of people have also served as dock monitors throughout, especially the summer, when we were primarily filling that role with our volunteers. Some people did it occasionally and some people did it quite often. However frequently people could do it, always appreciated and a big help. And then in lieu of doing traditional large, work parties that we may have done in the past, we've been doing smaller group or individual projects. We did some care of the red set oars in the summer. We unfortunately had some vandalism with the shells that are stored on the steps. Somebody spray painted them a lovely shade of mauve. Within 24 hours, we had some adult members in there volunteering to clean them up. And then a lot of other smaller group or individual projects, helping with equipment care, working with our boatman, and doing other tasks that are appreciated around the boathouse. So thank you to all of our members. It just goes to show how dedicated and how engaged everybody is with the Pocock community. Next slide. Just brief notes on our staff. We are at the same staffing level where we were at this time last year. The cast has changed a bit. There were some people who have rotated out due to their own personal reasons, and some new coaches that we've brought on. I'm the only full-time staff and part-time coach, and then part-time admin. Currently, we have 30 sessions of coached opportunities each week. And right now we're at 7 people per session. So quite a number of spots are available each week. It doesn't mean that we're getting 210 people with the coach every week. Some sessions tend to fill up based on the timing or the program, and some tend to be half enrolled. But there are quite a few opportunities. And I do take member feedback into account. We've been able to float some start times a little bit later in the dark. And as junior program has changed in the winter, and then they'll probably float back a little bit earlier as we get more light again in the spring. Also super important to our staff is the ability to do private lessons that is able to support additional funding for the coaches who maybe have gotten more payroll hours than we're able to provide right now, have been able to supplement it. We've had lots and lots of private lessons. So it's been a great boon for those staff who have that flexibility and are interested in working with athletes in that way. In the early spring, we had a lot of our coaches involved through the payroll protection plan, both coaching, doing remote coaching, individual feedback and training, as well as doing other boathouse tasks that were important and needed to get done. So thank you for everybody's flexibility on that. When I coach, I tell the rowers any seat, any boat, any day. And I think our coaches have really stepped up to that as well, and have been able to fill in and be flexible to support the club and what we need and what we're able to provide for them right now. Next slide. So current programming options, obviously only in singles. You do see the occasional double or pair going out that has people who live together in it. We've also loaned out all of the equipment that goes through a 6 to 7 week rotation that I manage. Had a bit of a flub last week with my Google form, but it's got sorted out. This last round had the highest number of requests since we've had since the very initial round when the boathouse was actually physically closed in the spring. I was expecting that, both with the holiday challenge going on with Concept 2 and with the winter shifting, people do tend to kind of go more indoors. I was not able to get everybody who requested equipment, but we did get everybody who requested equipment for the first time equipment, which I think is important, that we're trying to share the resources as equitably as we can. And members are understanding of that, very much so. One big difference this year is normally we have a pretty robust adult beginning rowing program. We only did one month long tubby only session. And that was kind of based on interest and also equipment availability. However, it was a great success. So thinking of the future, we might do sculling specific learn to rows. I think my understanding is that was an option in the past at Pocock, not the last couple years and not the 2 years I've been here. But of the 5 members that did the one session, 4 rolled into an actual membership, which is like the lowest attrition, I think, of any learn to row opportunity. So that's great. And I would also imagine that moving forward, even once we are able to change up our rowing strategies and go back to team boats, that we will have a more robust sculling class program than we've had in the past. Just a lot more masters are now comfortable and like training in singles. And I think that the club can pivot to take advantage of that. Next slide. I think this is the only graphic you guys get in the whole slideshow. I'll keep it pretty simple. Membership trends. This is not people, but memberships, which is a little important to notice. If you look at 19 and 2020, towards the top, there's like an olive green and a purple. Those are our family memberships. So this past year, we've had quite a growth in family memberships, which is reflective of 2 members of a household. So even though the bar looks a little bit shorter, on par for head count, we're pretty close to where we were last year. I think we're at +3. Biggest hits were fitness only. We got 1 monthly and 1 annual fitness member hanging on because they want an erg. That will come back somewhat when we're able to have people indoors. The other memberships, the U25 that we provide, there's a separate membership option for Ancient Mariners and Montlake Rowing Club. And then the large bars at the bottom are adult monthly, so that's a single adult. Those have stayed pretty consistent over the last 2 years. I anticipate that between 80 and 87% of our current membership is going to return in January. There have been a few, 4 people who've confirmed with me that they are just removing themselves from Pocock indefinitely. And then about 10 or 12 members who have said they would like to support Pocock in the future when our programming changes. So I do expect and anticipate there to be a drop in membership in January. And hopefully we start to see that boost back at the time we're able to get people back out in teams and bigger boat options. We do have a wait list right now. We're not taking on more members just because we want to make sure that the finite resources we have can support the members we have. So we do have a small wait list that I'll reevaluate for January, and also anticipate getting the beginning rowing going maybe in April. Depends on how the winter and the weather goes. I think we're going to have some members speak next about some of our community members that we've lost in the past year. So we have an in memoriam section.
So this would be Kirby Meyer if he's here to start with a discussion of Ron Lorentsen. We won't need these. Kirby, are you on?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm having screen problems, but we'll try and make it work. So I understood that Cliff's slide was going to be first. There we go.
Sorry, maybe we should start with Cliff then. Let's do that. George, will you start us off?
Fair enough. I just wanted to say a few words about Cliff Hurn, who was a member of the Ancient Mariner Rowing Club. Cliff passed away at the end of July after a year-long battle with esophageal cancer. Cliff was kind of a mountain of a man, both in his physical appearance and his outgoing personality and love of life. He was a champion oarsman at the University of Washington. He won 2 IRA national titles. He led the Huskies to a silver medal in the Pan Am Games, and he was a multiple time member of the U.S. national rowing team. But most of us know him just in the last few years as an ancient mariner at the PRC. He was a big, gregarious guy. You can see him stroking the 8 in the picture, and he's the second non-coxswain from the left in the lower picture. He's a big, gregarious guy in Mariner Red, warming up at the PRC to go rowing in the mornings. He was a large presence. He would start telling stories while he was warming up and tell them while he was rowing. And after practice, the stories would continue in the men's locker room. Cliff had a big voice, and so they were probably also heard in the women's locker room. If you were at the boathouse when Cliff was there, you probably heard him because his presence could fill up a whole room. And that included the coffee shop afterwards. But Cliff was more than just talk. He was a very powerful rower. He could spin that erg, and he could move a boat. He was a great teammate. Again, he was a mountain of a man. We miss him and celebrate the great years that he shared with us as a mariner. So thank you. On to you, Kirby.
Okay. Ron, there's some exciting news about the fund that Pocock was able to set up for the Ron Lorentsen Fund, so we could have, you know, some funds to help with training new coaches and with new adult rowers, and among other things. And I just got an email today that Seattle Financial Group, one of, Ron's previous employer, is going to a match up and they're hoping to send over the paperwork to us so that the next $7,500 they will match. I also have a email out to Toby Ream, who works at Microsoft, and Microsoft has a long history of doing matches and such as well. And so I'm hoping that they will do some type of match as well. And I'm pretty excited about that part. Ron, like Cliff, was a big part of Pocock, and you know, both as a coach and a rower, and made a big impact on lots of folks. And so this fund seems to be kind of getting its legs under it now, and I hope that it can continue to be a good source of remembrance and for Ron.
Okay, thanks, Kirby. I would just ask Patrick, did you have any comments to close us out today?
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to just kind of circle back and really just express my gratitude towards everyone at this table, our graduate, my gratitude towards the staff, and just a deep sense of, you know, and it's kind of might seem strange, but just to be optimistic about our organization and about our sport moving forward next year. I think there are a lot of unknowns. I think that so far, I think we've been challenged to up our ability to deal with unknowns. And I think we've also pivoted our ability to, you know, really see, take advantage of the small details, right? A sunrise, a couple of good pieces, a small improvement in our technique, a new friend that we've made. I think we've really been forced to champion those small interactions and those small details in our experience with rowing. And yeah, I'm optimistic that will keep us moving forward, and that will inform our love of the sport as we move forward. I understand there's a lot of questions potentially about sort of what we think the year will look like. I think that's another thing that we've had to learn how to do which is accept both, both the positive and the negative at the same time, accept the unknown. I do want everyone to know that we are committed to keeping people safe. We are on the conservative side of moving into team boats or moving into indoor training, because Brooks mentioned we've been able to prevent the spread of COVID in our facility, which is a massive priority for us. I do want to say that we will likely not be the first people to expand our operation. And I think on the scale of the PRC and the scale of our operation, I think that would not be a good idea. So I don't think we should expect to move forward like that. We should expect to move forward in a measured form, confident of our ability to keep people safe. It's also important to note just about our expectations surrounding racing in 2021. I think, as Helen mentioned, at this point, our greatest expectation is that racing will be, so as Corey mentioned with what we were able to do in the fall, our greatest ability to race will be on the grassroots and the organic side of things. So I think we all kind of can remember that, like, if there are 2 boats out on the water, we can have a race. So I do think that's important for us to recognize that, on a regional or a national scale, U.S. rowing is, let me put it this way, we're not super optimistic that U.S. rowing will be able to host a regional championship in May or June in the same way we've been accustomed to doing that. So U.S. rowing is working on, potential regattas later on in the year. But again, like all of us, they're pivoting, working on the best information they have, and they're working with a lot of restrictions and constraints as well. So again, I think we want to make sure that we're realistic, just realistic about that, and acknowledge that the differences in our experience will continue on. But like I started off with, I think we can celebrate some of those differences and take advantage of it. So. Yeah, again, thanks everybody for coming this evening, and thank you for.
I just want to butt in really quickly, Patrick, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to share how appreciative and how impressed I am with the staff here at the GPRF, and particularly the leaders that you're all very familiar with at the PRC. I know that Patrick and Corey and Helen, as well as Rachel and everybody, works really hard to make sure that every week we have a wonderful place to row, and they've done a great job keeping this vibrant community together. And there's so much work that gets done that, I have not been here very long. I started in September, but being able to come in and understand and see that work ethic is just so impressive and so inspiring. And it's also wonderful to see this great community of people that are here to surround them as they do their work. So I'm very impressed and very inspired, and I just want to make sure that our staff really gets proper applause and recognition for the great work that they do, because I know we come to the boathouse in little moments, but I see them every day, and they come every day to work with so much passion for this. And so I just want to thank them.
Any other comments anybody else wants to make before we close out? Okay, thanks everybody.